Fungus Homunculus. My name is Elijah Carter, and if you're hearing this, I need you to understand something very simple before everything gets complicated. The world did not end with a bang. It began with a smell. Not the smell of smoke or blood or burning cities. Bread, nuts, banana, and something else beneath it all. Something warm and heavy and wordless, like a memory my body seemed to recognize before my mind did. I didn't know that at the time, of course. Back then, in the beginning, it was just another story flickering on a screen. The first recordings came out of the Congo. I didn't see them in real time. I watched them later, after everything had already gone wrong, when the footage felt less like science and more like evidence. The jungle in those videos doesn't look real at first. Even now, when I replay them, it feels too thick, too green, too alive. The camera follows a group of researchers pushing through a wall of leaves, machetes whispering against vines. Insects drone constantly, like a choir of tiny engines, a low, restless hunger layered into the sound. Everything is damp. Light doesn't fall straight. It filters, bends, breaks into hazy fingers. And then, somehow, the jungle steps back. That's the only way I can describe it. One moment they're hemmed in on all sides, and the next there's a clearing where there shouldn't be one, a neat round absence in the green. Not hacked out, not burned, just made. In the center of that space sits what the reports later called the first cluster. It rises from the soil like a crown that grew instead of being forged. Not a single stalk and cap, but layered flesh, petal on petal, forming rounded tiers. The color is wrong in a way that pulls at your eyes, a pale gold, warm from within, like candlelight trapped inside bone. No one speaks at first. You can hear their breathing change on the recording. It shifts from harsh jungle panting to something softer, slower, reverent. The first time I noticed it, I remember thinking they sounded like people who'd stepped into a church without meaning to. A woman's voice, Drive, Kimmy, though I didn't know her name yet, finally breaks the silence. Do you smell that? She doesn't sound afraid. That's important. Even now, listening back, she sounds surprised, grateful almost. One of the men laughs under his breath. Banane, he murmurs. Banana. Another says, No, roasted nuts. A third inhales more deeply. Bread, like sweet bread. They're all circling it, reaching for what it really is, and none of them quite land on it. It smells like banana, yes, like roasted pecans, yes, like bread right as the crust darkens and starts to singe. But it isn't any one of those things. Not entirely. The camera edges closer. The frame tilts down, catching boots, dark soil, the fungus itself. Even now, watching it, I can almost imagine the smell bleeding out of the screen. This is the closest I can come to explaining what it must have felt like. You're 6 years old again, and someone you love is in the kitchen, humming. Everything you've ever worried about is somewhere far away. The house is warm. The oven is on. There's sweetness in the air, but it isn't simple sugar. It's sugar that's learned something through fire. Butter, spice, toasted grain, all of it braided together into a promise. Not you will eat, but you will be okay. That's the scent that met them in that clearing. On the footage, one of the interns closes his eyes and whispers, It smells like home. Not his home, exactly. There's no house in the world that smells precisely like that. I know that now. But the nervous system doesn't care about precision. I didn't have the language for it yet when I first watched the footage, but I do now. Memory isn't just photographs and dates. It's hunger and relief. It's the way your body learns safety before your mind catches up. That mushroom didn't copy recipes. It copied the feeling of the first good meal after you've been afraid you might never have one. They do what scientists do. They circle it, measure, take samples. Dr. Kemi presses gloved fingers into the soil at the base, lifts them, and brings them to her face. She inhales again. Even through the grain of the recording, you can see her eyes shine. When she speaks, her voice trembles. We've never seen anything like this. I remember pausing the video there the first time I watched it. You can tell, even without knowing how the story ends, that she loves it. That matters later. I didn't understand how yet, but I could feel the weight of it. Not yet. They cut pieces free and sealed them in plastic and glass, hands careful, reverent. The containers are handled the way people handle stolen fire, like they're afraid it might forgive them, or punish them, or both. The next recordings jump hard from green to white, jungle to laboratory, fluorescent lights, stainless steel, machines humming with the self-importance of expensive equipment. The first cluster sits inside a controlled chamber, mist curling slowly around it, as if the world itself hasn't quite decided whether this thing should have grown here. The smell is different in the lab, not weaker, just altered. I learned later that smell doesn't really live in the air, it lives in the brain. And whatever this organism was, it knew how to walk those halls. On the screen in front of Dr. Kemi, data scrolls. 1 mushroom, 1 fruiting body. Calories, enough to sustain an adult human for a full day. Proteins, complete. Amino acids, all essentials, balanced. Vitamins, so many they read like a dare. Toxins, none detected. Irritants, none detected. Known allergens, none detected. None, she whispers. It's an error. Her assistant smiles, uncertain. The machine. We ran it 3 times, she says. Not sharp, just firm. Her eyes never leave the screen. It's not wrong. He leans closer. In the reflection of the monitor, you can see his face hovering faintly over the data, small, ghost-like. So 1, he says slowly, just 1 is a complete meal? Yes, she swallows. Not a snack, not emergency rations, a complete, balanced day's food. She shakes her head, almost to herself. It's like it was built for us. She doesn't mean anything by that, not then. It's just something people say when they trip over a solution that fits too cleanly. They test again. And again. They feed microscopic portions to lab animals. The reports note no distress, no adverse reactions. If anything, the animals improve. Coats glossier, eyes brighter, movement smoother, and more even. Reading it later, I remember thinking it was as if some constant internal static had been turned down. The mushroom grows wherever they put it. Africa, Europe, the States, Asia. I watched the footage stack up over weeks. Different labs, different continents, same result every time. Change the soil, the light, the water. It never resists. It just adapts, unfolding into that same pale gold form, exhaling the same impossible smell. Somewhere along the way, someone names it. Not manna yet, that comes later, when marketing men start slapping Bible words onto other people's miracles. In the early reports, it has longer names. Latin strings that taste like dust when you read them aloud. None of that sticks. It never does. The world doesn't really meet a creature until it hits a screen. The first time a chef touches it on camera, it isn't on some loud cooking show with applause signs and sponsors. It's a quiet segment buried inside a science program, a crossover nobody asked for. They bring in a chef from Paris, white hair, deep laugh lines, the kind of man who has spent his life taming fire and butter. He stands in the test kitchen, rolling up his sleeves, studying the cluster like it's a problem he's agreed to solve. You've tasted everything, the host says, half joking. Everything? The chef smiles. None, but I have tasted many mistakes. Let us see if this is one. I remember leaning forward when he picked up the knife. He cuts a slice. The camera shifts closer, tight on the blade as it passes through the flesh. There's no tearing, no resistance, just a clean, quiet separation, as if the mushroom is willing. The interior is dense, marbled with faint veins of deeper gold. He doesn't season it. No oil bath, no herbs, no garlic, just a pan, butter, heat. When it touches the metal, the sound isn't violent, it's gentle. Like rain starting, fat spits softly, steam rises, slow and thick. He leans in and breathes. His eyes close. I had to rewind that part. This is a man who's built a career on controlling his face while tasting things in public. And he loses that control. His mouth trembles. One hand slides to the counter to steady himself. It smells, he says quietly, like the first time my mother baked for me after my father left. No one laughs. Even through the screen, you can feel the room hold its breath. He shakes his head, embarrassed, tries again. Pardon, it smells like banana bread, roasted almonds, caramelizing sugar, and warmth. Warmth? The host prompts. Yes, the chef says. Warmth, not heat. There is a difference. He opens his eyes. It smells like being forgiven. Later, he will insist he doesn't remember saying that last part. I read that in an interview months afterward, when people had already started cutting that sentence into montages. He flips the slice. The brown side gleams, crusted where butter and surface sugars have made a quiet agreement with flame. He plates it on a small white dish. No garnish, no flourish. Just the mushroom and a fork. He eats. One bite. He chews slowly, the way professionals do when they're thinking. He swallows. He sets the fork down. What do you think? The host asks. The chef looks at the mushroom like it has told him something private. If this becomes common, he says, no other food will ever be as honest. Everything else will feel less. That's when it starts, though no one calls it a beginning yet. There's no explosion, no screaming, no alarms. Just a quiet, steady shift in what people believe is possible. Clips from that tasting drift online. Not viral, not all at once. They trickle through food blogs, get clipped into reaction videos, folded into compilations with titles like Future Foods That Will Change Everything. The footage doesn't surge forward. It moves sideways through the culture. A cooking channel grabs it next, the kind my mother liked to keep on in the background so the house wouldn't feel empty. I remember the first time I saw it there, I wasn't really watching. I was scrolling my phone on her couch while she dozed in her chair, the TV, washing the room in shifting colors. A host with teeth too white and eyes too bright held up a tray of mushrooms like they were a craft project. This, she said, smiling wide, is the Congo golden. One of these can feed you for an entire day. I'm not exaggerating, folks. Scientists have confirmed it. The studio lights made the caps glow. Steam rose from a pan where sliced pieces already sizzled alongside vegetables. The host laughed softly. And the best part, she said, it smells like dessert and dinner at the same time. The audience laughed and clapped, making those eager, approving noises people make when they want to belong to a moment. The camera zoomed in as she tasted it. The same thing I'd seen with the chef happened again. Her eyes rolled back, then sharpened, like she'd just remembered something she'd lost. Oh, she moaned. Oh, that is sinful. My mother stirred in her chair, half awake. You see that? She mumbled. They say it's good for you, that mushroom. Yeah, I said. It might have ended there for me. I might have gone to the store the next week and picked one up without thinking. A small indulgence. Something new to break the monotony of cheap staples. That's how most people met it. Not in a lab, not in a crisis, but as a curious purchase made while their minds were somewhere else. But I don't like mushrooms. Never have. The texture, the idea, the whole concept of eating a fungus has always set something off in my head. Even as a kid, you couldn't trick me. Minced them, hide them in sauce, swear they weren't there. I'd find them anyway, my tongue turning into a detective against my will. So when the host said, "You gotta try this, folks," and the camera cut to the audience nodding in unison, I stood up and turned the volume down. The smell followed me anyway. Not in reality. There was no manna in the house yet, but in my head. I'd been given enough pieces to build a phantom of it. I started thinking about it at odd moments, stirring coffee, rinsing rice, changing the sheets on my mother's bed. That sweet, nutty, bready warmth kept drifting through imagined rooms, and every time, a small, traitorous part of me wanted to breathe in deeper. I didn't. Not then. The mushroom moved on without me. After that, it was everywhere. Restaurants added it to menus. Health articles floated through my feeds, praising its complete nutritional profile. A few cautious nutritionists wrote op-eds urging patience, warning that we should study it longer before embracing it so fully. I remember noticing that nobody shared those. People shared the recipes instead. Government agencies issued statements. The language was careful. No known toxins. Promising for food security. Long-term studies ongoing. While they talked, cultivation scaled up. By then, it was already clear what the labs had proven beyond doubt. It would grow anywhere. Looking back, you could chart its spread by smell. Neighborhood by neighborhood, city by city, dinnertime air changed. Some places barely noticed. Areas where cooking still meant heavy spices and old recipes sharp enough to hold their ground. Other places surrendered almost immediately. Why make 3 dishes when 1 mushroom and some rice could feed everyone and make the house smell like a holiday? The rich got it first. That much I remember clearly. Exclusive restaurants, wellness retreats, subscription boxes aimed at early adopters. But manna didn't stay exclusive for long. There was too much demand, too much money to be made feeding the poor, something that felt like kindness and cost less to grow than meat. Within a year, I could find it anywhere. Corner stores, co-ops, big box grocery chains, little bodegas that used to survive on cigarettes and lottery tickets. It came fresh, dried, powdered, canned into broths and ready-made stews. Manna bars for the gym. Manna shakes for breakfast. Manna baby food. 1 spoonful, the labels promised, a full day's growth. All that time, there were no monsters. No disturbed graves. No screams in the night. Just dinners. Just full bellies. Just that smell. I read blog posts about how it helped people save money. How it gave them energy. How it made them feel like they were finally doing something right. Churches hosted potlucks built around manna casseroles. Vegans celebrated. It was the perfect cruelty-free staple. Aid workers cried on camera when they showed how far a single shipment could stretch inside a refugee camp. If you had told anyone then that they were ushering in their own undoing with every bite, they would have laughed, or gotten angry, or waved you away as another person afraid of good things. I wouldn't have believed you either. I just didn't want to eat it. That was all. One stubborn preference in a world rushing toward the table. Sometimes I think about that. All the sermons I heard growing up about big choices. Stand here or there. Choose this day whom you will serve. All that weight placed on grand decisions. And in the end, the thing that kept this organism out of me was smaller than all of that. I didn't like mushrooms. Everything else came later. I don't know the exact day the mushroom stopped being a curiosity and became a culture. Maybe no one does. Maybe it wasn't a day at all. Maybe it was a drift, a slow tide rising behind the noise of ordinary life until we were all standing in it, unaware our feet were already underwater. What I remember is how quiet the change was. How normal. How harmless. How easy. Long before you saw it in shopping carts, you could trace manna spread by smell. At first, it appeared only now and then, passing an apartment window cracked for ventilation, or a restaurant's back door leaking a ribbon of warm, nutty sweetness into an alley. Not overwhelming, not constant, just a soft echo. Then I started noticing it where it didn't make sense. The hallway of my mother's building. A laundromat vent. Someone's gym bag unzipping. A break room microwave. That smell, banana, roasted nuts, warm bread, and something deeper, something that felt like a memory kneeling just behind you, began drifting through daily life like a wandering ghost looking for a place to settle. People didn't talk about it at first. They simply accepted it. Humans will accept almost anything if you introduce it softly. Eventually, it worked its way into small talk. Not politics. Not the price of milk. Not the weather. Manna. 2 strangers waiting for a bus would lean slightly toward one another and nod at a street vendor, frying it on a portable griddle. You tried it yet? It's amazing. It's, comforting. Once a man in line at the pharmacy turned to me and said, unprompted, "My arthritis don't bother me as much when I eat it." He wasn't selling anything. He wasn't preaching. He was just talking. The way people do about small discoveries. He patted his knee and smiled, like manna had said something kind to him. Maybe it had. I wouldn't know. I kept passing it by. The first time I saw it sitting loose in a grocery bin, it didn't look like a global miracle. It looked like something pretending to belong in the produce section. The caps lay in neat piles on shallow trays, each one glistening faintly under fluorescent lights, as if it carried its own private glow. An old woman stood in front of me at the bin. She reached in, picked up a cap, lifted it to her nose, and closed her eyes. You could see the exact moment the smell reached her. Her shoulders dropped, her mouth softened. She nodded to herself, slow and certain, like something had just whispered, "Yes, yes, yes, directly into her bones. She placed 2 trays gently into her cart, the careful way someone sets down a child. I stood there for a long time, not close, just watching the world meet something new and accept it without hesitation. The signs around the display were quiet at first: complete nutrition, sustainable, 1 cap a day. Nothing loud, nothing aggressive. But over time the messages sharpened. They grew teeth beneath the soft smile. Live better. Feel clearer. Be whole. Manna never made promises out loud. People made them for it. I didn't understand yet how dangerous that was. I only knew, later, that it mattered. My mother wasn't well around then. Age had settled into her bones, slowed her steps, fogged the edges of her mind. I did what I could, but you can't stop time. You can only take its blows and stay on your feet. One evening I came home and heard humming from the kitchen. She hadn't cooked in weeks. Not a real meal. But there she was, leaning on the counter, hands trembling slightly as she sliced something golden on a wooden board. The smell reached me before anything else. Warm, thick, sweet, savory, like a holiday that hadn't happened yet. "Ma," I said, stepping closer, "what are you doing?" She looked up, eyes shining with effort or memory. I couldn't tell which. "Elijah," she said softly, "this mushroom, it smells like when you were little." It didn't. Nothing smells exactly like that. I know that now. Childhood is something we reconstruct after the fact, stitching feelings into stories so they'll hold still. But the mushroom felt like it. She placed a slice into a pan with a bit of butter, and the room changed. The air warmed. The shadows softened. The kitchen itself seemed to lean inward, as if the world wanted to smell it too. My mother smiled. A small smile. Fragile. Like glass warmed by the sun. "I thought I'd make you something tonight," she said. "You work so hard." The slice sizzled, browning evenly. She watched it with reverence, like she was tending something sacred. I stood behind her, feeling something twist low in my stomach. Not fear, not disgust. Just wrongness. A wrongness I didn't have language for yet. She lifted the slice onto a plate. The smell intensified. Banana, pecans, brown butter, toasted oats. A hint of cinnamon that wasn't cinnamon, just something the brain wanted to call cinnamon because it needed a name. "Here," she said, offering it to me. "Just try a bite." I shook my head gently. "Ma, I can't. You know I don't." "You used to love mushrooms," she said. "No," I replied softly. "I didn't." She blinked, confused. For a moment I thought she might cry. Then her face smoothed. She nodded to herself, lifted the fork, and took a bite. Her eyes closed. Not in ecstasy. Not in surprise. In peace. Like something inside her had finally settled after years of drifting. She exhaled slowly, as if her lungs were letting go of a burden they'd been carrying too long. "It tastes," she whispered, "like forgiveness." That was when I began to hate it. Not because it hurt her. She smiled afterward. She looked lighter, younger. There was no immediate harm. I hated it, because standing there, I finally saw how easily manna slid into the cracks of human longing, how it pressed itself against old wounds and whispered comfort, how it made the lonely feel held, the hungry feel full, the grieving feel remembered. I went to bed that night with the window open, trying to breathe air that didn't smell like a memory. The sweetness lingered anyway, clinging to the walls, the curtains, my clothes. To my mother. She slept deeply that night. Too deeply. Her breathing slowed in a way that unsettled me, not because it sounded dangerous, but because it sounded content. She hadn't been content in years. And standing there in that little apartment with only the refrigerator humming and the streetlights buzzing faintly through the window, I had the strangest sensation. Not a thought, not a belief, a feeling, like something had found a way to look out through us, like it was observing quietly, without urgency, without hunger in the way we understand hunger. Waiting, not attacking, not announcing itself, just settling in. The only metaphors I had for it then were plant things. Roots finding purchase, a seed resting in soil it already knew would warm. I didn't sleep much after that night. Not because anything happened. Nothing happened. That was the terrible part. The world didn't shudder. The walls didn't bleed. There were no visions, no signs, no omens. Just quiet. My mother slept peacefully in her room, her breathing deep and even the kind of rest she hadn't known in years. When she woke the next morning, she was rested, clear. She hummed under her breath while folding laundry, something she hadn't done without prompting since her memory first began to slip. I made her tea while she talked, about how light her chest felt, how warm her bones felt, how her thoughts didn't bump into one another anymore. She said the world felt less heavy. She didn't say it was the mushroom. She didn't have to. I was hearing the same language everywhere by then. Different words, same shape, clearer, brighter, more whole, better sleep, less pain, sharper thinking, stronger appetite. Or, in some cases, no appetite at all. It was becoming a kind of global folk medicine. The cure-all no one openly claimed to believe in, but everyone quietly trusted. On morning shows, scientists spoke with careful excitement. High nutrient density, perfect amino acid balance, sustainable protein alternative, cognitive benefits under study. The hosts smiled like they were sharing something gentle and hopeful. Influencers filmed themselves sautéing it in garlic and butter. Athletes blended powdered manna into protein shakes. Wellness gurus claimed it aligned the gut-brain axis. Vegans praised it for being cruelty-free. Keto dieters praised it for being low-carb. Paleo dieters praised it because, somehow, it fit there too. Everyone could shape manna to match whatever story they were already telling themselves. But not everyone was enchanted. In the corners of the internet, where skepticism grows like mold, people were asking questions that didn't make it onto television. Why was there no genetic match in any known fungal family? Why were all three early discoveries clustered near river systems that flooded seasonally? Why did the USDA have no approval timeline, no transparency? Who was funding the labs? Why was every nation calling it manna? That wasn't taxonomy. That was branding. Some said it was bioengineered. Some said it was a government push to replace meat. Some said it was a black budget experiment that had slipped its leash. Most of that washed past me. But there were others. Voices tucked away in old forums and comment threads, posting under names like Sawtooth Prophet or Glass Forest Seer, who said things that lodged uncomfortably in my chest. What if that object in 2017 didn't slow down because it was a rock? What if it was distributing something? What if manna didn't evolve here at all? What if we didn't discover it? What if we were chosen? Most people laughed at them, dismissed them, muted them. At the time, I did too. I didn't want answers. I just wanted my mother to keep breathing like that. People don't like anything that threatens a miracle. I didn't believe the theories either, not then. To me, they were noise. People reaching for drama because the truth felt too simple. I'm a vegetarian because I hate the idea of eating something that once had a heartbeat, not because I think I'm some kind of cosmic prophet. Still, the unease stayed. Not terror, not paranoia, just a thin thread of discomfort that hummed whenever I thought about how quickly the world had opened itself to manna. My mother kept eating it. Every day. A small slice. Her memory improved. Her tremors softened. Her joints hurt less. She smiled more. And I kept telling myself the same thing. If something eases her suffering, who am I to fear it? I didn't touch it anyway. Not a taste. Not a bite. A person should listen to their intuition, even when they don't have words for it. Especially then. Within months, manna wasn't new anymore. It was infrastructure. Grocery stores gave it entire aisles. Powdered manna for smoothies, manna jerky, manna protein bars, manna meal kits, manna noodle cups, manna baby puree. Restaurants built menus around it. Manna ramen, manna burrito bowls, manna risotto. Fast food chains rolled out manna melt and manna supreme. Even gas stations sold manna wraps sealed in plastic. The smell, warm banana bread, spiced nuts, sweet oats, floated through cities like an invisible festival. People joked that manna was the new avocado toast. only cheaper, healthier. Online communities formed around it. Recipes, meal plans, 30-day full mana challenges. People filmed themselves glowing on camera. Doctors talked about reduced nutritional deficiencies. Gyms reported improved stamina. Teachers said kids were more focused. Nurses mentioned faster recovery times. Everywhere I looked, someone seemed to be blooming. You'd think that would have comforted me. You'd think it would have quieted whatever instinct kept tugging at me. But I've learned since that when something looks too beautiful, you should pay attention to the shadow it casts. And there was a shadow. I didn't know its shape yet, but I felt it. I noticed it in small things. In the way stray dogs sniffed the air near manna stalls and backed away, growling. In the way certain birds avoided discarded pieces on the ground. In the way forests near cultivation sites went strangely quiet. And then there were the dreams. People started talking about them casually, the way you mentioned weather. Vivid dreams, color-saturated, too detailed to feel imaginary. Dreams where the forest breathed. Dreams where the ground pulsed beneath bare feet. Dreams where something enormous was listening. Most people laughed them off. Nightmares, stress, overactive imaginations. I didn't laugh, because my mother started dreaming like that too. She called them comforting. She said she felt surrounded. She said she felt held. Held by what? She couldn't explain, or maybe wouldn't. And every time she talked about them, she touched her chest lightly, as if something inside her was being shaped. Looking back now, the signs were everywhere. Everywhere. Plain as daylight. But when the whole world is falling in love, you don't see warnings. You see a celebration. And love, real love, desperate love, has a way of dulling the senses. It makes people stop listening, stop questioning, stop resisting, especially when the voice guiding them sounds kind. I didn't notice the shift at first. Not because it wasn't happening, but because change almost never arrives like a scream. It comes like a sigh. Soft, steady, easy to ignore. The first shift I felt, not read about, not watched on a screen, was the silence of the animals. Not all of them, just enough to matter. In my neighborhood, stray cats used to fight at night, screeching, yowling, slamming against fences. It was annoying, but it was life. Then, slowly, that stopped. Then, slowly, they stopped. Not all at once. Not in a single night. Just fewer fights. Less noise. Less movement. My mother said she liked the peace, said it meant the neighborhood was settling. But what I felt wasn't peace. It was absence. The squirrels that used to race along the power lines disappeared. The raccoons that knocked over our bins never came back. Birdsong at dawn thinned out, softer, hesitant, like something unsure whether it should speak. People joked that the animals were evolving, that they were becoming mana-fed and mellow. Others said they must have migrated somewhere quieter. At the time, none of that sounded right to me. They didn't seem calmer. They didn't seem gone. They seemed to be staying away from certain streets, from certain buildings, from places where manna was most common, where people gathered with it, cooked it, carried its smell on their clothes. That was what unsettled me most. A food so perfect, so nourishing, so widely praised, should have attracted wildlife. They should have been raiding gardens, tearing into trash bags for scraps. But I never saw that happen. Not once. I didn't understand it then. I only felt the wrongness of it, like a cold finger tracing slowly down my spine. While I was noticing those things, the rest of the world kept celebrating. Manna festivals. Manna cook-offs. Manna marathons, sponsored by athletic brands, promising improved performance. Manna cafes, with menus built entirely around the mushroom. Marketing campaigns saturated everything. A better world, one bite at a time. Sustainable, nutritious, limitless. The food that feeds the future. The United Nations released a report predicting global hunger could be eliminated within 5 years. Influencers cried on camera, grateful they could finally afford nutrient-rich meals. Parents talked about children who were stronger, calmer, more focused. Religious leaders called manna a gift of providence, though no two agreed on which God had provided it. Scientists were divided, not over its benefits, but its origin. That was where the fracture lived. Quiet. Hairline. Easy to miss. Some argued it was a natural mutation, a fluke of evolution, a miracle pulled from deep jungle ecology. Others said that nothing on Earth evolves with that level of nutritional precision, that it was too perfect, that it had been engineered. But no one pushed too hard. Not when something good was happening. Not when suffering was finally easing for millions. I've learned that humanity doesn't like unanswered questions when the answers taste good. And the world had never tasted anything like manna. My mother believed in it completely. Her recovery was so dramatic that strangers noticed. People at church asked what she was eating, what supplements she'd switched to. She would smile and say, without hesitation, "That mushroom saved my life." Her skin brightened. Her eyes sharpened. Her memory, her memory, returned in ways that felt like prayers answered. She remembered stories from my childhood she hadn't touched in decades. She remembered my father's laugh. She remembered her own mother's voice. I should have been grateful. I was. But fear has a way of growing best in moments where gratitude dulls your caution. I understand that now. Because sometimes miracles aren't gifts. Sometimes they're invitations. And sometimes they're bait. Around this time, I started noticing something else. Night felt different. Not dangerous. Not eerie. Just watched. When I walked home from the bus stop after work, the air seemed thicker, heavier, full of a presence I couldn't explain. Not something hostile, nothing that made me want to run, just attentive, like the world itself was leaning in, or holding its breath, or waiting. I didn't have language for it then. I only knew the feeling followed me home, lingered at street corners, stayed just behind my shoulder. One night, while scrolling through my feed, I came across a clip, grainy, shaky, filmed on a phone somewhere rural, Alabama, according to the caption. In the video, a farmer's dog stood rigid at the edge of a cornfield. Its fur was raised, its growl barely audible, vibrating in his chest. Nothing moved in the corn. Nothing visible. But the dog refused to step closer. The caption read, "Ever since the manna fields went up near here, the dogs won't go near the crops. Anyone else seeing this?" The comments split immediately. Animals sense spirits. Animals sense danger. Dogs act stupid around new crops. Probably a coyote. But one comment, quiet, almost swallowed by the rest, caught my eye. Dogs don't fear food. They fear what moves beneath it. I scrolled past it. I shouldn't have. I should have read it again. Saved it. Clicked the profile. Looked at what else that person had written. I should have done 1,000 things differently. But everyone is careless before the world breaks. Every last one of us. At the time, this still felt like a beginning. Not an event, just a gentle shifting beneath our feet, the way the ground settles before a real tremor. No one had died. No one had vanished in a way that made the news. No bodies had changed. No graves had stirred. No missing person reports matched the patterns we would later learn to recognize. As far as anyone could tell, nothing was wrong. But something was wrong. I understand that now. And the world kept smiling, unaware that something had already begun to curl itself beneath the roots of everything we trusted. The first things to disappear were the pets. Of course they were. Animals always go first. We just pretend not to notice. Across the country, people posted harmless questions on neighborhood apps and Facebook groups. Has anyone seen my cat? Dog ran off last night. Please keep an eye out. Outdoor pets disappearing. Coyotes, maybe? Strange tracks in the backyard. Anyone else? My chickens won't go into the coop. They're terrified of something. No one connected these posts. Why would they? Pets wander. Predators pass through. Life keeps moving. But what unsettled me, even then, was what wasn't happening. There were no signs of struggle. No blood. No torn fences. No dragged bodies. The animals weren't being hunted. They were just gone. Not eaten, not chased, removed. Erased from people's lives the way chalk smears disappear when you drag a wet hand across a board. I remember scrolling late one night while my mother slept down the hall. It was after midnight. I don't know why I was awake. Unease, insomnia, instinct. Probably all three. I fell into a thread about a dog named Clover. Clover had vanished from a fenced yard in Missouri. No holes dug. No gate left open. No broken boards. No tracks. Nothing. Her owner wrote, "It's like she didn't walk out. It's like she vanished." Someone joked about aliens. Another blamed teenagers. But one comment stood out. Not dramatic, not supernatural. Just wrong. Clover went missing the same night something was moving in the trees behind my property. Thought it was deer, but it wasn't moving like deer. Too tall, too smooth. It was ignored, buried under condolences and laughing emojis. I saved it. For weeks afterward, I went back and reread that comment. I didn't know why. Not then. Around the same time, police reports began to surface. Small ones. Scattered ones. A jogger missing in Oregon. A hunter missing in Georgia. A camper missing in Tennessee. A teenager missing near the redwood forest. Never groups. Never families. Always one person at a time, in remote or wooded areas. Places where wildlife had begun to thin out. Places near cultivation sites. Places where manna had worked its way deep into the soil. I didn't connect those things then. No one did. At the time, they were just dots on a map. And the world is full of dots. You don't see the pattern until it burns itself into your eyes. Even then, most people still refused to look. My mother kept eating manna through all of it. Every day. Every meal. She felt better each week, lighter, steadier, more herself. She even started knitting again, humming softly as her fingers moved through patterns her hands remembered before her mind did. I should have been happy. I told myself I was. But one night, while she was cooking, I heard her laugh in the kitchen. Not loud, just to herself, like someone had shared a joke meant only for her. "Something funny?" I asked. She shook her head, smiling. No, just remembering something." It was the way she said it that unsettled me. Careful, private, as if she were repeating words that had been given to her. I told myself it was nothing. Improved nerves, better mood, relief after years of fog. The alternative was too much to hold. Then came the first video. It was posted anonymously, under an account with no picture and a name that felt like a breath you don't finish speaking. _Forest Night, _13. 30 seconds. Dusk. The frame showed a rural backyard. Tall grass, a shed, a tree line 50 yards out. The camera shook, breathing rasped in the background. Whoever filmed it was already afraid before they pressed record. You could hear insects. You could hear wind. And then there was another sound. Too light for footsteps. Too smooth for a deer. Too controlled to be a bear. Something moved between the trees. Tall, thin. Wrong. I'm careful with that word now. I wasn't then. All I knew was that it didn't read as human, and it didn't move like anything I recognized as animal. It slid behind a trunk, then leaned back into view, slowly. The movement was fluid, almost instructional, like a body still learning the rules it was meant to follow. In the final second, the camera lurched downward as the person filming sucked in a sharp breath. You could hear him whisper, "That's not a deer." Then the clip ended. Most people dismissed it. Fake. Costume. Creepypasta bait. Some bored guy in the woods. AI nonsense. But a few comments stood out. "I've seen something like this. Not fake. Check your woods. Animals are acting strange. That thing moves like something wearing skin that doesn't fit." Those comments never stayed long. The accounts deleted them themselves within minutes. Fear makes people speak. Terror makes them erase what they've said. The world kept moving, laughing, mocking, scrolling past warnings. The disappearances continued. Animals went quiet. Entire stretches of land emptied themselves. And through all of it, mana consumption rose. More companies, more products, more recipes, more devotion. The miracle mushroom stopped being food and became culture. Looking back, I can say something else had already begun then, something slow, something patient. But at the time, all I felt was pressure, like breath being drawn in, waiting. The first body didn't make national news. That still troubles me. You'd think the discovery of a corpse that didn't fit any familiar pattern would have broken through at least one headline cycle. It didn't. It stayed buried in local reports, whispered between departments, passed like an unwanted burden. The body was found in northern Louisiana. A hunter, middle-aged, experienced. The kind of man who knew the woods the way other people know their childhood homes. He'd been missing for 2 days. His brother found him, face down near the tree line. Rifle untouched. No sign of struggle. No animal prints. No drag marks. Just a man lying where the forest had decided to leave him. The sheriff's report used familiar language. Possible heart attack. Exposure. Wildlife interference cannot be ruled out. No one who saw the body believed that. I didn't see it in person, but I saw the photograph that slipped online for 15 minutes before someone scrubbed it. And once you've seen something like that, you don't unsee it. Someone always scrubs the truth first. I can't show you the image now. I don't have it anymore. But I remember it. The body was intact. No bites. No tears. No claw marks. What stayed with me was his face. His eyes were open so wide they looked stretched, like they might tear. His mouth was frozen in a scream that never made a sound, not decay, not rigor. Terror caught mid-thought. His hands were drawn close to his chest, fingers curled inward, the way people do when they try to shield themselves from something above them. And the worst part, the part that didn't make sense to me at the time, was the ground. The dirt beneath him had been disturbed in a perfect circle, maybe 3 feet across. Too clean, too deliberate, like something had stood there for a long time. Not kneeling, not crouching, standing. At the time, I didn't know what that meant. I only knew the shape of it made my stomach drop. The coroner's notes leaked alongside the image. Short, clinical. Cause of death, inconclusive. No trauma observed. Extreme fear response evident. Pupils dilated. Hands rigid. And one line that didn't belong with the others. Soil disturbance pattern does not match any known animal or human. There was no elaboration. There never is, when the explanation is larger than the language. People in the nearby town whispered about it. Some said the hunter died of fright. Some blamed meth addicts. Some said it was an escaped convict. Some insisted it was a hoax. And some, the ones who lowered their voices and glanced toward the trees, said they'd seen shapes moving in the forest at dusk. Too tall, too thin, too still. Things that didn't walk right. Things that stood motionless for hours. Local rumors are easy to dismiss. The world did exactly that. A week later, there was a press conference. Not about the hunter. About something else. A USDA spokesperson stood at a podium, stiff and composed, and said, "There is no evidence linking mana cultivation to any environmental or wildlife concerns." I remember realizing, even then, that no one had publicly asked that question yet. No major outlet had run stories about problems with mana fields. The denial came first. That was the moment something inside me twisted. I didn't have the words for it yet, but I understood the shape of the lie. Truth doesn't ask for protection. Fear does. The spokesperson continued. Mana fields are safe, regulated, and environmentally beneficial. Reports circulating online about strange animal behavior are unfounded and spread by individuals seeking attention. They put strange in quotes. They used unfounded. And my favorite, individuals seeking attention. It's always attention seekers, right up until the evidence stacks too high to ignore. Online, everything split into two currents. One was loud. People praising manna for saving money, improving health, giving energy, easing symptoms they'd lived with for years. The other current was quieter. People mentioning animals avoiding manna sites, pets disappearing, unsettling shapes near woods, dreams they couldn't shake. Those posts didn't last. They were deleted. Accounts vanished. Platforms removed them for misinformation. Some of the posters came back days later. Different tone, calm smiles, short apologies. They said they'd been mistaken. The internet accepted that. I didn't. People don't walk fear back unless something stronger pushes them to. Around this time, my mother told me something she shouldn't have been able to remember. She said she'd seen my father in her dreams. He'd been dead 16 years. She described him standing in the kitchen beside her, smiling, telling her she was almost done healing. I didn't know what that meant. She said his voice sounded clearer than it had the day he died. She said she felt warmth in her chest whenever she ate manna. She said she felt connected. Connected to what? She couldn't explain. Or maybe she didn't have the words. Or maybe the words weren't hers anymore. The world kept turning. More disappearances. More denials. More praise from manna. More silence from the animals. Whatever shadow was growing, it was widening, darkening, patient in a way that made time itself feel complicit. And still, humanity kept eating, kept trusting, kept loving the thing that had begun to feel attentive. I wouldn't have used that word then. I only know it fits now. Every miracle casts a shadow, and manna's shadow was starting to take shape. The first attack that people couldn't fully dismiss happened in Montana. They called it a bear. They always do. It's the easiest explanation. Large enough to account for violence, familiar enough to calm the public, ordinary enough to smother questions before they form. But this wasn't a bear. Everyone even loosely connected to the case seemed to understand that, even if they didn't say it out loud. The victim was a college student named Drew Latimer, 22. Geology major, out on a research hike with 3 other students. It was supposed to be simple, a 4-hour trek to collect soil samples near a riverbank. At one point, the group split briefly. Drew moved toward a patch of thick brush, 30 yards away, close enough to see, just far enough to lose sight of him. Then they heard him scream. Not the scream someone makes when they fall. Not surprise. Not pain alone. The kind of scream that sounds like something has reached inside a person and torn the sound loose. By the time the others reached him, it was already over. They didn't see what attacked him. They saw movement, something tall slipping back into the trees, too fast to follow, too smooth to read as animal, too upright to be anything comforting. None of that appeared in the official report. The official report said bear. But one of the surviving students wrote something else that night. She posted to a private Discord server, hands shaking so badly her typos outnumbered her words. I didn't see it directly. I saw a screenshot preserved in a forum that archived everything before deletion. This is what she wrote. It wasn't a bear. Its arms were too long. It moved like it was made of water. And its eyes were wrong. They glowed like they weren't reflecting light, like they were making it. Her account disappeared within an hour. The next morning, her parents released a statement thanking the authorities for their support. I've learned that when families do that publicly, it usually means someone has already decided what the story will be. Drew's body didn't look the way animal attacks usually do. That much made it into whispers, even if it never reached the news. There were no tearing wounds, no gnawing, no claw marks. The injuries were blunt. His chest had collapsed inward. Ribs bent like wet reeds. Jaw shattered. Not chewed, not ripped, broken. As if something tall had wrapped itself around him and squeezed. I didn't have proof of that. Just the shape of the injuries as they were described. The leaked coroner's note, the one that survived online for about 10 minutes, used colder language. No trace evidence. No prints. No animal markings. Cause of death: compressive trauma consistent with force exceeding known human capability. One line stayed with me longer than the rest. No identifiable pattern of contact. Government personnel collected the body within hours. Not local police. Not wildlife officers. That detail came later, from a ranger who spoke off record before going quiet himself. Men in unmarked uniforms. No insignia, no names offered. They took the body. They took the soil samples. They took the students' phones. They took the trail cameras. They took everything. What they left behind was a press release. Bear attack, tragic but not unusual. Except it was unusual. It was the first incident that close to a major manna cultivation site. That fact never made it into any report I saw. You weren't meant to notice. Around that time, I had my first encounter. Not with a creature, not with violence, just awareness. Awareness from the other side of the dark. It was late evening. I had stepped outside to take out the trash, letting the smell of summer air settle around me. The cicadas were loud. The sky still held a trace of light. My mother was inside, humming softly over the dishes. Everything was normal. Everything should have been safe. But the backyard felt wrong. Still. Thick. The air tight with something I couldn't see. I heard a sound near the fence. Not a rustle. Not an animal. Not footsteps. Just a soft, deliberate shift of weight. The sound someone tall makes when they adjust their stance without moving their feet. I froze. My pulse didn't race. It slowed. A strange calm settled over me. The kind that comes right before recognition. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Something was in the yard with me. Watching. Listening. I couldn't see it, but I felt its attention settle on me like pressure against my chest, not curiosity. Assessment. The feeling you get when something is trying to understand what you are. I stepped backwards slowly, trash bag still in my hand. Whatever was behind the fence didn't follow, didn't retreat. It just stayed there. Silent. Waiting. I backed into the house and locked the door. My mother looked up from the sink and asked why I looked pale. I told her the only truth I had, which wasn't much. Something's out there. She laughed gently. That warm, motherly sound that makes the world feel ordinary again. "Oh, Elijah," she said, "probably just a deer." That's what people say when they need life to stay simple. But deer don't breathe like that. They don't stand so still. They don't watch with intention. And they don't wait for you to turn your back. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark with the lights off, watching the yard through the blinds. Nothing moved. But I knew something had been there. And I knew, in a way that didn't require proof, that it wasn't finished with me. Nothing that patient ever is. Not long after that, something happened in eastern Kentucky. I didn't witness it. I learned about it the way most people did, through fragments. Posts. Local articles. Screenshots before they vanished. A group of hikers disappeared. 12 of them. On a popular trail. A place with regular foot traffic. Families, retirees, weekend walkers. Not wilderness. Not remote. 12 people don't vanish in a place like that. But they did. Search teams went out. Volunteers, dogs, drones. They swept the trail from end to end. No bodies. No tracks. No discarded gear. No signs of panic. It was as if the ground itself had opened and swallowed them. What unsettled me most was the campsite they found half a mile off the trail. Chairs arranged neatly around a fire pit. Backpacks placed by trees. Water bottles half full. Phones still plugged into portable chargers. Everything orderly, except the chairs. All of them faced inward, toward the fire ring, like the hikers had been sitting together. And the footprints. They didn't scatter. They didn't run. They didn't wander. Each set ended abruptly. 12 sets of prints. 12 stopping points. No direction of travel. Just a circle of empty seats around a cold fire. And a silence so complete the search teams commented on it. No birds. No insects. No animals. Nothing. The forest, according to one ranger's comment that disappeared a day later, felt like it was holding its breath. The official response came fast. Too fast. By the time I was reading the first fragmented reports, FEMA was already on site. That detail stood out to me later. How quickly federal teams appeared, how little time local authorities seemed to have before everything changed hands. The area was sealed off, body camera footage was confiscated, drone recordings disappeared, volunteers were thanked and dismissed, statements were handed out already written. The press conference used calm, familiar language. Rockslide. No remains recovered. Search ongoing. Challenging terrain. Except none of that matched what people on the ground had been saying before they went quiet. There was no rockslide. No disturbed stone. No dust clouds. No geological event anyone could point to. Still, the explanation held. People will accept almost any answer if the alternative is too heavy to carry. Around that same time, I began noticing something else. It wasn't tied to one place, or one report, or one headline. It showed up in conversations, comments, half-deleted posts, things people said and then laughed off. Dreams. People were dreaming in patterns. Different ages, different cities, different lives, but the same shape of dream. They talked about forests deeper than any on Earth, about warmth pulsing up from underground, about a distant thrumming, felt more than heard, like a heartbeat traveling through soil. They described a presence beneath the roots, watching, waiting. Some dreamed of walking between towering fungal pillars that glowed softly like lanterns. Some dreamed of corridors that felt grown rather than built. Some dreamed of being welcomed by something they couldn't see. A few admitted the dreams frightened them. Most didn't. Most said the dreams felt peaceful, comforting, like coming home. That was the part that unsettled me most. Not the imagery. The belonging. Comfort can be earned. Belonging can be faked. And the feeling they described didn't sound like comfort to me. It sounded like surrender, dressed up gently. Every person I saw talking seriously about those dreams had one thing in common. They ate manna. Regularly. My mother started dreaming like that too. Worse, she began looking forward to it. One morning over breakfast, she said, almost casually, "In my dream, something was waiting for me in the dark. I wasn't afraid. It knew me." I smiled, nodded, said something non-committal. Inside, my stomach tightened until it felt hard to breathe, because I'd begun noticing something else. Whenever she talked about the dreams, her hand drifted to the center of her chest. Always the same place. I didn't know why that mattered yet. I didn't understand what it might mean. Not then. None of us did. But whatever was happening beneath the surface wasn't subtle anymore. And whether we were ready or not, we were beginning to learn. That same week, I had my second encounter. This one wasn't vague. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a warning. I was taking my mother to a doctor's appointment, early morning, the sun barely up, dew still clinging to the grass. As I walked toward the car, something by the tree at the edge of the yard caught my eye. A shape. Tall. Still. Facing away from me. At first, I thought it was a person. Maybe a neighbor cutting through the alley, maybe someone lost. Then it shifted. Not a step. Not a turn. Just a slight tilt of the head. Too smooth. Too slow. Too controlled. Like it didn't have bones the way things should. Like it was listening. I froze. The figure didn't turn around. Didn't react. Didn't acknowledge me at all. It just stood there, studying the air. I pulled my phone out, my hand shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. But the moment I lifted the camera, the figure stepped behind the tree. Not walked, stepped, as if it knew exactly how much of itself to show. I moved toward the tree slowly, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my teeth. There was nothing behind it. No footprints, no shadow, no broken dew, just absence. And the smell, faint, warm, familiar. Banana bread, roasted nuts, sweet oats. Manna. I didn't understand what that meant yet. I only knew, standing there with my phone useless in my hand, that whatever these things were, they weren't random. They weren't wandering. They weren't lost. Something about us drew their attention. Something about the people who carried that smell with them. I didn't know why. Not yet. The disappearances continued. And then something else began. It started with a sound. Not loud. Not violent. Not alarming. Just present. Late one evening, people across the country described feeling it. A vibration so low it barely registered a sound. A hum that didn't seem to come from the air at all. It came from underneath. Some said it felt like a subway rumbling deep underground. Some said machinery. Some said a hive. Everyone said the same thing. It wasn't outside them. It was under them. A pulse in the floorboards, in the soles of their feet, in their teeth, even in their bones. It lasted about 20 seconds. Then it stopped. People stepped outside, confused, calling to neighbors. Did you feel that? Earthquake? Construction? Did your lights flicker too? The denials came quickly. No seismic activity. No drilling. No testing. No anomaly. But millions had felt it. At the same time. Different continents. Different time zones. One pulse. Later, I learned something else. People who ate manna reported another sensation when the hum passed. They smelled it. Not in the air. In memory. Warm. Sweet. Comforting. Like a thought being placed gently into their minds. My mother woke from a dead sleep, gasping. "It spoke," she whispered. I rushed into her room. "What spoke?" She touched her chest, right where she always did. "I don't know," she said, trembling, "but it was beautiful." That night, I didn't sleep at all. Not because something was outside, but because something was underneath us. The next morning, the news exploded. Not about the hum, about power issues, lighting malfunctions, brownouts, grid instability. Half the country experienced rhythmic dimming, not outages, something stranger, lights pulsing softly as if responding to a shared signal. Engineers blamed infrastructure. Politicians blamed each other. Companies blamed weather. When power stabilized, people noticed something worse. All wildlife cameras near manna cultivation sites were offline. Every trail cam, every conservation feed, every nature stream, black. Simultaneously, some feeds returned hours later. Some never did. The ones that came back showed nothing. Forests without movement, clearings without birds, land that looked alive but wasn't. Later, a few isolated frames surfaced from private cameras, hikers, homesteaders, campers, who hadn't uploaded through official platforms. They never stayed up long. In those frames, never clear, never centered, were shapes. Always at the edge. Always half-turned. Always moving too smoothly. Long limbs. Tilted heads. Bodies that bent where they shouldn't. Not predators. Observers. Most people never saw those images. They were removed as visual corruption. AI artifacting. Misinformation. By the time anyone asked questions, the evidence was already gone. I saw them. Someone compiled the clips into an archive, mirrored, reposted, hidden behind layers of links, and I watched them late at night with my stomach tightening a little more each time. I hadn't seen one directly since that morning by the fence, but the footage confirmed what my intuition had already been circling. They weren't random. They weren't wandering. They were systematic. The way the camera angles repeated, the way certain regions appeared again and again, the way movement followed invisible lines. It felt less like animals crossing territory and more like surveyors working a grid. Scouts. Preparations. For something that hadn't arrived yet. 3 days after the hum, I witnessed my first death. Not on a screen, not in a rumor, not in an article. Right in front of me. My mother and I had gone to the grocery store. A short trip. Bread, eggs, tea, ordinary things. We were standing in line when the man 2 people ahead of us dropped his bag. His hands began to shake violently. He blinked, confused, like the world had slipped half an inch out of alignment. Then he collapsed. Not slowly, not dramatically. He just folded, like his bones had given up all at once. People rushed forward. A woman knelt beside him, yelling for someone to call 911. A teenager tried CPR. A man ran for the AED on the wall. None of it mattered. The man wasn't breathing. His pupils dilated almost instantly. His chest didn't rise. His lips turned blue. He was dead before his body finished hitting the floor. The paramedics arrived quickly. Too quickly, I realized later. They didn't ask many questions. They didn't examine the area. They didn't linger. They loaded the body and left. The store reopened within the hour. Employees moved with practiced calm. Customers shook their heads, murmured sympathy, and kept shopping. But I noticed something no one else did. When the paramedics tilted the body onto the stretcher, a faint scent lifted from the man's clothes. Warm. Sweet. Familiar. Banana bread. Roasted nuts. Sweet oats. Manna. My mother didn't react. She didn't notice. I did. And for the first time, something horrible clicked into place. The things in the forest weren't just following manna. They were following the people who carried it inside them. And the dead. The dead carried it the strongest. Like a signal. Like a beacon. Somewhere beneath the soil, something was listening. Not long after that, I read about Oak Hollow Cemetery. A small town in Arkansas. The kind of place you forget as soon as you pass it. A groundskeeper arrived one morning and found the soil behind several newer graves disturbed. Not dug up. Not vandalized. Just raised. Swollen. Hollow beneath the surface. He assumed rodents. Erosion. Bad ground. But the longer he looked, the less it made sense. The mounds weren't random. They were centered precisely over 3 graves, all buried within the last 2 months. Exactly 2 months. He called the sheriff. The sheriff escalated it. The state got involved. By afternoon, the cemetery was sealed off. The explanation posted later blamed groundwater saturation. But the groundskeeper said something else before he was removed from the property. He claimed he had knelt beside one of the raised plots and pressed his ear to the dirt, and that he heard something moving underneath. Not worms. Not water. Not settling soil. Breathing. He quit his job the next day and left the county. That story didn't make the news. It appeared online briefly, posted by someone claiming to be his niece, then vanished under a fear-mongering label. A copy survived. That's how I read it. And that was the moment, when the shape of it finally locked together for me. What was happening wasn't isolated. Wasn't coincidence. Wasn't chaos. It was timing. A sequence. A cycle. 2 months. 2 months between death and something else. After that, similar reports surfaced. A grave in South Dakota collapsed inward, as if pressure had been applied from below. A mausoleum in Virginia developed cracks across its marble floor. A crematorium in Utah reported a malfunction. One body that should have burned clean produced a strange, fibrous ash. The technician quit the next day. Each incident stood alone. Each explanation sounded reasonable. But they shared one detail I couldn't ignore. In every case, the deceased had eaten manna regularly. Widows mentioned it. Children recalled it. Doctors confirmed it quietly. That detail never appeared in print, never in official statements, never in press conferences, and the public never connected it. You can't see a pattern when someone keeps flipping the puzzle over every time you touch it. The disappearances continued. People blamed kidnappings, wildlife, human trafficking, drugs. But the locations shifted. Not just forests anymore. Not just farms. Not just rural roads. Cemeteries. An online survivalist group posted 3 disappearances this month near Ridgeway Cemetery. Dogs won't track past the first row of stones. Something's moving out there at night. The post vanished within minutes. Someone claimed the poster disappeared a week later. I don't know if that part was true, but by then I didn't need confirmation because I had already seen enough. Not just the footage, not just the patterns, not just the bodies. This time, it involved my mother. It happened on a warm evening just before sunset. My mother was by the window, tending her potted plants, humming softly, the way she had been doing more and more lately. That serene calm always put me on edge. It felt borrowed, like it didn't quite belong to her. She froze mid-motion. "Elijah," she whispered, "do you hear that?" I stopped and listened. I heard nothing. "No, Ma. Hear what?" She tilted her head slightly, eyes distant, unfocused. "That calling," she said. "What calling?" She touched the center of her chest. The same voice from my dreams. Something cold slid into my gut. I moved to the window. At first, I saw nothing, just a tree line, just the last light draining out of the sky. Then my breath caught. 2 shapes stood at the back of the yard. Tall, still, perfectly motionless. They weren't hiding. They weren't stalking. They were waiting, watching, facing the house, facing her. I grabbed my mother by the shoulders and pulled her back. "Stay behind me." She didn't resist. She smiled. A small, gentle smile that terrified me more than anything I had seen up to that point. "They're not here for you," she said softly, as if that was meant to reassure me. The shapes didn't move, didn't approach, didn't retreat. They just stood there, as if counting, as if recording, as if confirming something they already knew. Then, as the sun slipped fully below the horizon, the figures leaned back, slowly, unnaturally, like reeds, bending in a current I couldn't see. And they dissolved into the dark. I stood there long after they were gone. My mother whispered, almost to herself, "I think they're waiting." "For what?" I asked. She smiled again. "For when I'm ready." I felt sick, cold, like the floor beneath everything I believed in had cracked. I didn't know they were waiting for her to die, but the shape of that truth settled into me anyway. Whatever was moving through the forests, whatever paced the edges of towns, whatever watched the living, it didn't mourn the dead. It collected them. I learned about the first emergence later. It happened in Mississippi. A small town, 1 main road, a diner, a post office, a church older than most of the people buried behind it. For weeks, the groundskeeper noticed something wrong with one grave. Not collapsing, not swelling, loosening, as if the earth itself exhaled now and then. He didn't report it. He assumed the coffin was settling. He didn't want to disturb the family. Then came the night the dogs howled. Not at the moon, not at coyotes, not at each other. They howled at the cemetery. Every dog in town, every breed. Some strained against chains until their necks bled. Some barked until their throats went raw. Some hid under porches, shaking, whining, broken with fear. People came outside with flashlights, irritated, confused. "Shut that mud up. What's wrong with them? Somebody feeding them wrong? Probably a raccoon. But the dogs didn't stop. They weren't reacting. They were warning, screaming in a language we used to understand once. I watched the footage alone. Someone had saved it before it vanished, mirrored it, stripped the metadata, buried it behind dead links and encrypted folders. I found it the way you find things you aren't meant to see. Too late at night, clicking one more thread after promising yourself you'd stop. The video opened with breathing. Fast, shallow, footsteps crunching leaves. Teenage laughter, nervous, brittle. They'd hopped the cemetery fence on a dare, flashlights swinging, talking too loud, acting brave. Then the camera lifted. The beam of light landed on ground that should have been still. It wasn't. The soil was cracking. Not outward, upward. Slowly, steadily, as if something beneath it had all the time in the world. You could hear them reacting. What the hell? Is that a gopher hole? Dude, what is that? Stop moving closer. The kid holding the camera kept walking forward. The ground split wider. And then, a hand pushed through. Not skeletal, not decayed. Pale, smooth, unblemished. Too smooth, too long. Like something that had never lived, but had been made to resemble life. Someone whispered, "Nope." Someone else said it louder, over and over. "Run." But the kid with the camera didn't. He froze. The hand flexed, fingers curling, uncurling, testing the air. Then the forearm rose. Then a shoulder. Then something that used to be a face. It wasn't rotting. It wasn't human anymore either. The skin looked unfinished. Porcelain smooth, features soft, vague, as if whoever shaped it had worked from memory and gotten distracted. The mouth was too wide. The eyes sat too deep. The nose barely existed. The boy whispered, voice breaking, "It's him. Oh God, it's him." Something screamed behind him. Then the thing turned its head, not toward the sound, toward the camera, toward the boy, toward whoever would see this later. And in that moment, the boy finally ran. The footage dissolved into chaos, panting, stumbling, the flashlight beam whipping through darkness. But the last frame caught something unmistakable. The figure standing fully upright, not climbing, not pulling itself free, standing, as if it had always known how, as if it had been waiting. The authorities arrived at dawn. That part one didn't see. I read about it later, in fragments that survived before they were scrubbed. The cemetery sealed off. Phones confiscated. Hard drives seized. The explanation shifted as needed. Grave robbers. Gas pocket. Collapse. Disturbed coffin. None of it mattered. The teenagers knew what they saw. The dogs knew something had risen. And according to people who lived nearby, the air felt wrong the next night. Empty, like something had been removed and hadn't been replaced yet. I sat on my bed after the video ended. I didn't move, didn't blink. Not because I didn't understand what I'd seen, because I did. The pieces I'd been circling for months finally locked together. The timing, the graves, the disappearances, the smell. 2 months. Death. And then something else. I didn't know what to call it yet. I only knew it wasn't random. And I knew something worse. My mother had been eating manna every day for nearly a year. If she died, I couldn't finish the thought. Not all the way. I imagined her standing again. Not her. Something wearing her outline, built from her shape, her memories, her scent. Everything that made her my mother repurposed into something that no longer belonged to us. I sat down hard on the edge of my bed, and for the first time, the truth pressed down on me with its full weight. This wasn't an illness. This wasn't contamination. This wasn't an accident. Whatever manna was, it didn't end with consumption. It continued. And the world had mistaken the beginning of a process for a gift. A few days later, something much worse happened. This time, no one could pretend it was isolated. It was a humid Saturday morning in late June. I remember that detail because multiple posts mentioned the heat, the way the air hung heavy, the sky pressing down. It began in a cemetery outside Jackson, Mississippi. A large one. Hundreds of recent graves. The groundskeeper there didn't ignore things. He'd heard the dogs the night before, every dog on his street howling like something ancient had been stirred awake. He checked his windows, loaded his shotgun, waited for morning. At sunrise, he saw the ground moving. Not one grave. Dozens. Ripples passing through the soil. Not violently. Rhythmically. Like breathing. One mound rose higher. Then another. Then another. He backed away, hands shaking as he called 911. The dispatcher didn't believe him, so he filmed it. The camera panned across a graveyard that looked as if the earth itself was waking up. Hairline cracks spread across the soil. Loose dirt slid aside. One mound burst open with a soft exhale of earth. And then the video cut. That footage didn't survive. But the panic did. And from that morning on, the world stopped pretending something wasn't happening. Because no matter how fast you scrub evidence, you can't hide dozens of graves breathing at once. The footage continued. One hand emerged, then another, then a shoulder, then a face, pale, smooth, unfinished. And then more figures rose. One after another. They didn't claw their way out. They didn't gasp or struggle. They simply stood, as if gravity had only ever been a suggestion. These weren't corpses. They were new things wearing the memory of human shape. Some were fully formed. Some still seemed to ripple beneath the skin, as if whatever lay underneath was still deciding how to arrange itself. Some stood hunched and awkward. Some were tall and almost elegant. Some bore features that were nearly identical to the people they had once been. Nearly. That almost was what made it unbearable to look at. Familiar and wrong at the same time. In the audio, the groundskeeper's voice broke. "Dear God," he whispered, "they're waking up." One of the figures turned its head. Not fast. Not sharply. Slowly, gracefully. Its mouth parted slightly, like it was tasting the air for the first time. Then it stepped forward. Not toward the groundskeeper. Toward the town. Toward the living. Toward whatever scent lingered inside the people who had eaten manna. The camera jolted. The phone hit the ground. Footsteps, ragged breathing. Then nothing. That video didn't disappear right away. When the phone fell, it triggered an automatic cloud upload. For 47 minutes. 47. It spread. People shared it faster than anyone could stop them. Screenshots, screen recordings, downloads. I watched the counters climb in real time. The soil rising. The figures standing. The pale faces turning. That first step. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag Mississippi Week. Hashtag Racine. Hashtag Vayre back. Hashtag Graveborn. Hashtag not human. Hashtag not dead. Comment sections turned into screaming matches. Live streamers announced they were driving to the cemetery. News outlets scrambled, calling it unverified footage, while replaying blurred clips on loop. Then, 47 minutes after the upload, it vanished. Everywhere. Flagged as manipulated content. Removed for public safety. Accounts locked. Warnings issued. But 47 minutes was enough. Too many people had already saved it. Too many had seen what could not be unseen. For the first time, there was no ambiguity left. The dead were not staying buried. That afternoon, an emergency press conference aired nationwide. A man in a government suit stood at a podium, flanked by two silent officials whose faces never changed. He said the video was fake, a deep fake, AI generated, misinformation designed to incite panic. He said no graves had shifted, no bodies had risen. No creatures existed. He urged the nation to remain calm. I noticed he never blinked. People wanted to believe him. I understood that. Belief is lighter than terror. But belief cracks when your eyes have already learned something your mind can't erase. Panic didn't explode right away. It simmered. Churches filled overnight. Grocery shelves emptied. People packed bags. Families called relatives they hadn't spoken to in years. Gun stores wrapped lines around buildings. And through all of it, mana sales surged. People hoarded the thing they thought was saving them, not knowing. Not yet. Not understanding that whatever was happening didn't feel angry. It felt procedural, like a process unfolding exactly as intended. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table in silence. My mother sat beside me, sipping tea, humming softly, peaceful in a way that felt unbearable now. I watched her chest rise and fall, watched the faint tremor in her hands, watched the strange brightness in her eyes when she mentioned her dreams. I thought about the video, the graves, the timing, the figures in my yard, and something settled into me with a weight I couldn't shrug off anymore. The world had run out of time to pretend. Someone needed to record this, to document it, to preserve the truth before it was buried deeper than the bodies ever were. That was when I started writing this. Someone needed to say it plainly. Someone needed to speak before the world drowned beneath a calm, smiling silence. I looked at my mother, at her hands, the hands that braided my hair when I was small, bandaged scraped knees, cooked meals, held my face when I cried. Hands that one day might not be her hands anymore. My throat tightened. "I have to start filming," I whispered. She smiled gently, unaware of the storm breaking behind my eyes. "You always were meant to tell stories, Elijah." I didn't correct her. This wasn't a story. It was a warning, a chronicle, a record meant to survive us. I picked up the camera, sat down, pressed record, and began. My recordings didn't start dramatically. No music, no editing, no cinematic framing. Just a man who had run out of time to stay quiet. I sat at my kitchen table that first night, the refrigerator humming behind me, the house holding its breath. The camera light blinked red. "My name is Elijah Carter," I said quietly. "If you're watching this, it means the world is already unrecognizable." I stopped there. Not for effect, for grief. Then I continued. "I'm not making this to cause panic. I'm making it because truth is the only thing left that might save us." I inhaled sharply. "They're rising," I said. "The ones who ate manna. They're rising. Not zombies. Not ghouls. Not the dead as stories taught us to imagine them. But something reformed. Reshaped. Rebuilt. And worse than death could ever be." While I recorded, the government moved. Not openly. Not honestly. I watched the pattern unfold the same way I'd watched everything else. Through press conferences, silence, disappearances, and language carefully chosen to dull the edges of reality. First came denial. The same phrases repeated across every channel. "There is no evidence of reanimated bodies or anomalous biological activity." Except there was evidence. Videos. Witnesses. Graves rupturing in places too numerous to hide. Denial wasn't about convincing us. It was about buying time. Time for what? I didn't know yet. Time to help people? Or time to save the people already in power? Then the scientists went quiet. Research teams studying mana stopped publishing overnight. Government contracts vanished. Labs closed for safety evaluations. New non-disclosure agreements appeared. Some researchers resigned. Some simply disappeared from public view. One email leaked briefly before it was erased everywhere. We underestimated the latency period. The substrate is not biologically inert. The emergence aligns almost perfectly with the projected cycle. Substrate. Latency period. Cycle. Words meaningless to most people. Words that chilled me to the bone. After that came redirection. News cycles filled with safer stories. Mana production paused for review. No health risk. Possible contamination in select batches. No verified link between viral videos and cemetery hoaxes. Foreign disinformation campaigns exploiting AI-generated footage. They blamed Russia. They blamed China. They blamed pranksters. They blamed hysteria. Everyone was responsible except the mushroom. Because the world depended on mana now. Food shortages had eased because of it. Low-income families survived because of it. Hospitals relied on it. Schools fed it to children. Workplaces stocked it. Prisons used it as a cost-efficient replacement. Pulling mana away would collapse systems, which meant admitting the truth would collapse everything. So they kept smiling. And beneath the soil, something kept breathing. Denial stops working once the dead begin walking. And they were walking. Quietly. At night. At first, it happened in remote towns. Places where forests still outnumbered people. Places where animals noticed things before humans ever did. Trails closed without explanation. Campgrounds emptied. Park rangers filed reports about unusual animal behavior that never made it past internal review. Videos leaked of tall, pale figures moving through underbrush. Their movements were fluid and wrong, like bodies still learning how to obey gravity. Audio recordings surfaced too. Low rhythmic sounds captured by wildlife mics. Something like chewing, something like breathing, something like thought translated into vibration. The government called them hoaxes. Most people believe that because truth whispers and lies know how to shout. My second recording came 3 days later. The camera shook. I hadn't slept. The dead aren't attacking randomly, I said. They're moving with purpose. I rubbed my forehead, trying to keep my voice steady. They follow the scent of mana. It doesn't leave the body. It stays in the blood, in the marrow, in the bones. My voice cracked. They find us by smell, anyone who ever ate it. The recently dead are the strongest signals. I swallowed. I think that's why cemeteries were first. My eyes drifted to the hallway where my mother slept peacefully. I didn't speak for a long moment. My mother has eaten mana every day for nearly a year, I said finally. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. I looked back into the camera. This isn't a plague. This isn't a curse. I hesitated before the next words. It behaves like a life cycle, and we fed it. I leaned forward. If you're watching this, you need to stop eating mana immediately. I exhaled, not from fear, from inevitability. But for millions, I said quietly, it's already too late. I ended the recording, my hand lingering on the camera longer than it needed to. Even then, I think part of me understood I might not survive long enough to finish this in person. While I recorded, the dead continued to rise. Not everywhere at once. One cemetery at a time. One region at a time. One night at a time. They didn't attack. Not yet. They didn't swarm. Not yet. They walked. Slow. Methodical. Purposeful. Heads tilting slightly whenever the wind carried something familiar. Like sleepwalkers following a scent. Like newborns searching for warmth. And beneath the soil, something else was happening. I didn't know what it was then. I only knew the ground itself felt active, as if something vast had begun to stir. I learned about Baton Rouge the way I learned about everything else by then, through fragments that survived deletion. A foggy morning, Hillcrest Memorial Cemetery. A groundskeeper trimming hedges noticed soil shifting near a recent grave. He assumed an animal, until a hand broke the surface. Not gray, not decayed, not skeletal, whole, alive-looking. Another hand followed. Then the earth collapsed inward as a figure rose smoothly from the ground, brushing dirt from its face with an absent, practiced motion. The groundskeeper recognized him. A man buried exactly 2 months earlier. But whatever stood there wasn't confused. It didn't gasp. It didn't panic. It looked around calmly, the way something does when it already knows where it is. The groundskeeper spoke out of instinct. Habit, prayer. Senor? The figure turned its head toward the sound. Slowly, precisely, and it smiled. Not with emotion, with recognition. A human expression rebuilt from memory alone. From what I later saw in the footage, the ground didn't stop with one emergence. All around Miguel, the soil began to move again. Dozens of hands, dozens of faces, all rising. Every grave the same age. Roughly 2 months. Whatever preparation happened, it happened underground. Miguel ran. The newly risen didn't follow him. They stood still instead, bodies slack but upright, like figures waiting for instructions they couldn't hear yet. Miguel survived because he didn't carry the scent. He had never eaten manna. Later reports confirmed that detail. He had been allergic to it, avoided it completely. To the risen, he simply wasn't there. What they turned toward instead was the city, toward the living, toward anyone whose body still carried the residue of manna, sautéed, blended, roasted, powdered, hidden in processed food. They didn't rush. They didn't need to. Everything about their movement suggested patience. The first confirmed death that morning came from Baton Rouge. I didn't witness it. I watched it later through synced footage, security cameras from a nearby building, audio from a smartwatch that survived long enough to upload its data. The woman had been jogging past the cemetery, earbuds in, breathing steady, mind elsewhere. She noticed a man standing too still near the fence and slowed. "You okay, sir?" she asked. "Do you need help?" He turned toward her, not abruptly, smoothly. Another figure stepped out behind him, then another. Then another, all silent. All clean, all wrong. She backed away. "I'm calling 911. The first one reached her. There was no lunge, no violence, just contact. A hand closing around her forearm with steady, almost careful pressure. She screamed and tried to pull free. The grip didn't tighten. It didn't loosen either. More figures approached. Her smartwatch captured her last words. Stop, stop, stop. Then a single strangled breath. And silence. Her body showed no trauma, no wounds, no broken bones, no marks at all. The coroner's report listed the cause of death as undetermined. I didn't need the report to understand what had happened. She hadn't been killed for food. She hadn't been killed in anger. She had been killed deliberately. And when I counted the dates, the timing aligned with everything else I'd been tracking. When I watched the footage, I rewound it 17 times. Then I spoke into my recorder. "They're not hunting," I said. "They're planting." My voice shook. Every person they kill becomes another point in the cycle. I swallowed. "This isn't an attack," I said. "It's scheduling. Because once you see the pattern, it doesn't look like chaos anymore. It looks like agriculture." Witness videos from later that morning showed what happened next. 3 risen figures stepped out from Hillcrest Memorial Cemetery and reached the sidewalk. They stopped, all at once. They didn't look at each other. They didn't communicate in any way humans could detect. They just stood. Then more joined them. 2, 4, 9, all facing the city. all waiting. A man driving to work slowed his car and filmed. "What the hell is this?" he whispered. None of them looked at him. Later, investigators confirmed he'd never eaten manna. He didn't exist to them, but something else did. Several blocks away, a bakery truck rolled through an intersection. Fresh bread, coffee, sugar, and beneath it all, manna powder, used as filler in protein bars and drink mixes. In the footage, you can see it happen. 20 heads turn at once, perfectly, toward the truck. Then they began to walk. Not fast, not slow, measured, calibrated. The man filming whispered, "Jesus Christ, they're marching." Similar footage surfaced from other cities. Always the same pattern. At another cemetery, 13 more rose 2 minutes apart, as if governed by an internal timer. They joined others emerging from maintenance tunnels and back entrances. No speech, no gestures, no hesitation, just alignment. It happened in Baton Rouge, then Phoenix, then Columbus, then Charleston, then Dallas. Always where manna had been widely consumed. Always following the same principle. They weren't feeding. They weren't consuming the living. They were killing selectively. And each death planted something new. For later. I didn't know then how many cycles there would be. I only knew one thing for certain. This wasn't panic. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even war. It was cultivation. And we were standing in the field. 2:17 p.m. My breath was unsteady as I clicked through the leaked clips in the secure room. Different cities, different cameras, different light. But the movement was the same. The pauses, the turns, the pacing. I scrubbed back and watched again. And again. It wasn't random. It wasn't even adaptive. It was synchronized. I raised the recorder with shaking fingers and whispered, "It's not that they're thinking. It's that they're connected." I swallowed. Every cemetery, every burial ground, every place a spore has taken root. My mouth went dry. It's one organism. I sat back, heart pounding. "The bodies aren't individuals," I said. "They're limbs." A long silence passed before I finished. "And they're starting to move." At 3:09 p.m., the footage changed. I didn't see it happen live. I saw it afterward, pieced together from traffic cams, security feeds, phone recordings that survived long enough to upload. A bakery truck rolled to a red light. It never made it through the intersection. They surrounded it, not rushing, not screaming, not violent in the way people expect, just arriving. The driver panicked. I could see it even through the glass. Hands slamming the wheel, mouth open, doors locking too late. They opened the doors, pulled him out, and then the footage jumped. Every clip did. No gore, no struggle recorded cleanly, just the sudden absence of movement. The camera kept rolling after. The truck stood empty, and the figures walked on. When I realized the timing, my hands started shaking so badly I had to pause the video. 3:09 p.m. I checked another clip. 3:09 p.m. Another. 3:09 p.m. I whispered, "No, no, no, no." I pulled up a map of Baton Rouge, marked the locations, traced the movement. Every path converged in the same direction. Distribution routes, food trucks, processing centers, places saturated with manna. I said it out loud before I could stop myself. "They're not attacking." My voice sounded thin, strained. "They're replacing us." I replayed the jogger footage again. The way they turned their heads together, the moment they paused, the exact timing of their steps. I leaned closer to the screen, studying the shadows. More shapes slid into frame, never rushing, never colliding, always aligned. "It's a pattern," I whispered. "They're not wandering, they're following something." Behind me, my mother hummed. The sound made my stomach twist. She was in the kitchen, moving lightly, peacefully, sautéing manna again, her third meal of it that day. The smell filled the house. Warm, sweet, nutty, comforting. "Elijah," she said gently, "you need to stop watching those awful things. It's making you sick." I didn't turn. I rewound the clip again. Playback. This time I watched the edges of the frame, the shadows. The timestamp blinked at me. 3:09 p.m. That's when I saw movement outside. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, a shape beneath the street lamp. Then another. Then 5. Then 9. They stood in the road, perfectly still, facing the house. My breath left me in a thin, shaking exhale. "Mom," I said, barely audible, "stop cooking, please." She didn't hear me. She was still humming, spooning another shining scoop of manna into a bowl. I stood. The floor felt unreal beneath my feet. "Mom," I said again, my voice cracking, "get behind me." Because this time, I wasn't watching a screen. This time, they were here. She didn't move. She set her bowl down gently on the counter and stood there with her hands at her sides. Relaxed, breathing slow, eyes soft. There was no fear on her face. None. She looked like someone waiting for friends to arrive. Like someone who had already decided this moment was meant for her. My knees went weak. "Mom, please." She didn't look at me. Or maybe she did, and I just wasn't important enough anymore to register. She had eaten manna for months. Felt clearer, stronger, younger. She told me it made her feel whole. I grabbed the kitchen knife. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped it. Outside, I heard movement. Not rushing, not frantic. Slow, deliberate. I knew what that pace meant now. Then, crash! The front door exploded inward. Wood splintered. Metal shrieked. The whole house shuddered like it had been struck by something heavier than impact. 3 of them stepped inside. They didn't rush. They didn't scan the room. They moved like liquid poured into a mold. Smooth, quiet, unavoidable. I screamed and charged. I drove the knife into the chest of the first one. The blade sank in like I'd stabbed dense sponge. No blood. No recoil. No sound. I yanked it free and stabbed again. And again. Slashed its throat. Drove the blade toward its eye. Nothing. No resistance. No reaction. I might as well have been cutting bread. I screamed, my voice tearing apart in my throat. "Stay away from her!" They didn't even look at me. They stepped forward, and I felt them press through me, not striking, not shoving, just applying steady, impossible pressure. Like walking through a hanging curtain. I stumbled backward, gasping. I understood then. I wasn't soil. I had never eaten manna. I didn't matter. My mother stood in the center of the living room, hands at her sides, shoulders loose, face calm, peaceful, waiting, accepting, almost relieved. I screamed again, my voice breaking apart. "Mom, run!" She didn't. She didn't need to, because whatever had come for her had been with her for months already. She didn't. She didn't even look at me. The first one reached her and placed its hand gently on her shoulder. Gently. Like reassurance. I screamed and slashed at its arm. The knife passed through it without slowing, without resistance like I'd cut fog. Another step behind her. Another to her side. They were surrounding her. I threw myself at them, punching, stabbing, screaming until my voice broke apart. They brushed me aside. Not violently. Not cruelly. Like I wasn't even alive. I hit the floor hard, air blasting out of my lungs. I scrambled up, slipped, lunged again. Too late. Her body sagged. Her knees buckled. She fell backward into my arms. Her eyes were open. Her face was peaceful. Her mouth relaxed, almost smiling. She died without a sound. No gasp. No fear. Just release. I screamed. I don't remember stopping. I don't remember breathing. I remember my throat tearing and my vision going white at the edges. The risen turned and walked calmly out of the house. Their work finished. They didn't look back. They didn't need to. In 2 months, she would rise. I collapsed to the floor with her in my arms, shaking so hard my teeth rattled, choking on breasts that wouldn't come, clutching her body as the smell of manna still clung to everything. Warm, sweet, comforting, hateful. I buried my face in her hair and whispered, my voice barely there. You were waiting for them. Oh God, you were waiting. Outside, the night moved. Not with chaos, not with screams, but with quiet, steady footsteps. The sound of the risen heading toward their next host. I stayed on the floor with her longer than I should have. Long enough for the world outside to start breaking. At first it was distant, a pop I mistook for a car backfiring, then another, sharper this time. A scream followed it. Then another scream answered back from farther down the street. Gunshots. Not a single weapon, not controlled, not police cadence. Panicked, scattered, everywhere. I crawled to the window and peeled the curtain back with shaking fingers. The street was chaos. A man ran barefoot past my house, blood on his shirt, screaming something I couldn't understand. 2 houses down, a neighbor fired blindly into the dark, his porch light swinging wildly as he backed into his door. Across the street, something tall moved under a street lamp. Not running, walking. Someone screamed again, closer this time, and the scream cut off mid-sound like a switch had been flipped. That's when I grabbed the phone. My hands were slick. I didn't remember standing up. The first call didn't go through. The second rang until I thought it wouldn't be answered at all. Then, Baton Rouge Police Department, a woman said. Her voice was hoarse, strained, thin. What's your emergency? They're here, I said. They're outside. They're killing people. We know, she said. That stopped me. Gunfire cracked through the line, closer than before. They aren't human, I said. They look like people, but they're not. They're fungus, all of them, 100%. They don't bleed. They don't. We've been getting calls like this all night, she said, fast now, like she was trying to stay ahead of fear. Sir, we are overwhelmed. Another scream, right outside the station this time. I heard someone shouting orders, someone else crying. Oh my God, the dispatcher whispered. A gun went off, then several. The phone clattered, voices blurred, something heavy hit the floor. Ma'am, I said. Nothing. The line stayed open, hissing quietly, while the sounds of the police station tearing itself apart filtered through. Then the line went dead. I stood there in the dark kitchen, phone still in my hand, my mother's body cooling behind me, and I understood something with terrifying clarity. No one was coming. There would be no containment, no perimeter, no rescue. Only time. 2 months. That's how long it takes them to rise. I looked at my mother, at her hands, her face, the piece still resting there like she'd simply fallen asleep. And I knew, with a certainty that burned hotter than grief, she was not coming back. Not like this. The sun was rising when I dragged the first piece of wood into the yard. Furniture, fence boards, anything that would burn. The city was screaming now. Sirens overlapped until they lost meaning. Gunfire echoed in every direction. I wrapped her gently, apologized out loud as I lifted her, told her I loved her, told her I was sorry I hadn't been stronger sooner. When I struck the match, my hands were steady. The fire took her quickly, too quickly. I stood there until the heat forced me back, until there was nothing left that could rise, nothing left that could be reshaped, nothing left that could be claimed. The smell was not manna. It was smoke, ash, finality, and something beneath the ground went quiet. That's when I heard the knocking. Weak, panicked. From next door. I opened the door with the knife still in my hand. Mrs. Landry stood there shaking, her husband slumped behind her in the hallway. He just collapsed. She sobbed. Please. I didn't ask questions. I smelled it on him already. Manna. I told her the truth. She screamed. She begged. She tried to stop me. But when the first distant howl echoed down the street, that deep, resonant sound that wasn't animal or human, she understood. We burned him together. Then the house across the street. Then the one after that. Not everyone agreed. Some screamed at me. Some tried to fight. Some thanked me with hollow eyes. By noon, smoke rose from half the block. The creatures passed us by. They weren't interested. The fire had erased the scent. That night, when my hands could no longer stop shaking, I sat down in front of the camera. The red light blinked on. I spoke quietly, carefully, because panic helps nothing. My name is Elijah Carter. If you're watching this, the dead are already walking. I swallowed. They are not undead. They are not possessed. They are fungus shaped like us. I leaned closer. If someone you love has eaten manna and they die, you have 2 months. I paused. Let that land. Burn the bodies. Do not bury them. Do not wait. Fire is the only thing that breaks the cycle. My voice cracked then. I burned my mother today, and I saved her. I exhaled. This is not an invasion. It is agriculture, and we are the soil. I ended the recording. Outside, the city burned, and somewhere beneath the earth, something vast shifted. Not angry, not rushed, just patient, waiting to see how many of us would understand in time.